The air in Victoria Sanders' office felt sharp enough to cut glass, her words slicing through the morning quiet like a blade. "I consider this disloyal," she said, her voice a glacial drawl, eyes pinning me from behind her mahogany fortress of a desk. "My name is Lily Thompson, 28 years old, and in that moment I sat clutching my purse, fingers trembling not from fear, but from the dawning realization of betrayal. 6 years I'd poured into Harbor Point Communications building client empires in Spokane's unassuming skyline, only to be summoned at 9:00 a.m. on a Tuesday to face this accusation. What had I done to earn such venom? The answer I'd soon learn was daring to value myself. The shock of the summons still lingered as I faced Victoria, her perfectly manicured nail tapping a printed email like a judge's gavel. "Don't bother denying it," she interrupted as I opened my mouth. "You interviewed with North Bay Solutions last Thursday, a half day for a dental appointment, I believe." My stomach nodded not from guilt, but from the audacity of her framing. I'd been meticulous 6 years of late nights of turning mid-tier accounts into juggernauts of making North Bay our largest client, a cornerstone of Harbor Point's revenue. 30% of our annual earnings flowed through my stewardship. Yet here I was a traitor for seeking what was owed. "Victoria," her hand flicked up, silencing me. "Your building access is revoked immediately. Security will meet you at your desk." The injustice seared my chest as I recalled the past 3 years. Each spring I'd enter this same office with polished presentations, charts of revenue spikes, market salary benchmarks, client testimonials glowing with praise. Each time Victoria's response was a rehearsed sigh. "Tough budget year, Lily." Meanwhile, quarterly meetings boasted record profits, and her new luxury SUV gleamed in the parking lot. I'd believed in loyalty in the promise that dedication would be rewarded, but loyalty, it seemed, was a one-way street. Victoria slid my company ID across the desk, her face a mask of indifference. "I've disabled your email access." The finality of it stung, but something steadied me. A quiet resolve, I stood smoothing my blazer and met her gaze. "I understand," I said, my voice even despite the storm inside. Her eyes flickered, perhaps expecting tears or a plea. Instead, I extended my hand. "I wish you and Harbor Point continued success." She hesitated, confusion creasing her brow before a brief handshake. The gesture felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of my dignity. Security loomed as I returned to my cubicle, colleagues' glances darting my way. I packed 6 years into a cardboard box, family photos, a fern I'd nursed through winters, a mug from a client's campaign. Whispers followed, but I offered a reassuring smile. No drama, no scenes, just me walking out of Harbor Point's glass doors for the last time, the April sun warm on my face. In that moment, I realized Victoria thought she was punishing me. She couldn't have been more wrong. The cardboard box sat heavy in my car trunk, a silent testament to 6 years boxed up in under an hour. Driving away from Harbor Point, Spokane's familiar streets blurred past each turn, a step further from the life I'd known. I was unemployed for the first time since graduate school. The weight of it pressed against my ribs, but beneath the shock, a strange calm took root. Victoria had cast me out, but in doing so, she'd handed me a mirror to see my worth. At my apartment, I set the box on the kitchen counter, its contents a jumble of memories. The fern's leaves drooped slightly as if mourning the fluorescent lights of my cubicle. I sank onto a stool, the reality hitting: no more client calls, no more late-night strategy sessions. My phone buzzed, snapping me back. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. My best friend's voice, a lifeline. "Lily, I just heard," she said, her words tumbling out. Thomas texted me. "Are you okay, Thomas?" Her boyfriend and Harbor Point's IT specialist was part of the office grapevine. News traveled fast, I'm processing. I admitted, tracing the edge of the counter. "It happened so quickly," Olivia's voice rose indignant. "It's unfair. Everyone knows you're why North Bay stayed with us. Victoria's just threatened because you're better than she ever was." Her words struck a chord. Victoria, once Harbor Point's star account executive, had a habit of inserting herself into my North Bay meetings. Her presence more about ego than necessity. The worst part, I said, a flash of anger surfacing, is being treated like a criminal for wanting more after 3 years of no. It's her loss, Olivia said firmly. Maybe this is for the best, Lily. You've been undervalued forever. She was right. My loyalty had been to clients and colleagues, not a company that saw me as expendable. The sting of being escorted out lingered, but Olivia's words fanned a spark of possibility. I wasn't just discarded, I was free. My phone beeped with another call, David Clean's name lighting up the screen. My heart quickened. David, North Bay's CEO, had been a steady partner in our 3-year collaboration. I need to take this, I told Olivia. It's North Bay. Go, she urged. Call me after, I answered, steadying my voice. Lily, I heard what happened, David said, skipping pleasantries. Can you come in today? I'd like to accelerate our conversation. My pulse raced. Yes, 2 p.m. works, I said, recalling his earlier text about a final discussion. Excellent, he replied. And Lily, don't worry about this morning. Sometimes things work out for the best. Hanging up, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman staring back wasn't broken. She was unmoored, ready to chart a new course. I headed to my closet, selecting my sharpest suit, the one reserved for high-stakes pitches. As I dressed, the morning's humiliation faded, replaced by a quiet certainty. Victoria had tried to diminish the astigmatism to break the cycle of denial. I'd given Harbor Point my all only to be cast aside. Whatever came next, I'd never again settle for less than I was worth. The elevator's hum felt like a countdown, each floor ticking closer to a moment that could redefine everything. I smoothed my suit jacket, the crisp fabric a shield against the morning's chaos, and stepped into North Bay Solutions headquarters, where glass walls and mountain views promised a world apart from Harbor Point's beige confines. My heels clicked on polished floors, a rhythm steadying my nerves. Hours ago, I'd been escorted out of my old life. Now I stood on the cusp of something new, summoned by a CEO who'd hinted at opportunity. What did he see in me that my former boss had so willfully ignored? I'd spent the drive to downtown Spokane replaying my journey at Harbor Point, not the sting of Victoria's dismissal, but the climb from coffee runs to commanding North Bay's account. Fresh out of graduate school, I'd tackled projects others shunned, building trust with clients deemed impossible. By year 4, I was steering our largest account, a role that demanded intuition and grit. North Bay's CEO had once said I anticipated their needs before they voiced them. That trust forged over 3 years had led to this afternoon's meeting, and I resolved to approach it with the same clarity I'd brought to every pitch. The elevator doors parted, revealing a bustling open-plan office, collaborative pods, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, a stark contrast to Harbor Point's dated cubicles. David Clean stood waiting, his salt and pepper hair catching the light as he extended a hand. Thank you for coming on short notice, he said, his warmth disarming the tension in my shoulders. I shook his hand firmly, grounding myself. I appreciate the flexibility, I replied. It's been an unexpected day. He nodded, leading me through a workspace alive with energy, where familiar North Bay staff offered waves or quick smiles. Their recognition felt like a quiet affirmation. David's office, modest, yet inviting, prioritized conversation over intimidation. Bookshelves lined one wall, and a small table held steaming coffee mugs. Coffee, he offered, pouring one before I answered. I accepted the warmth of the mug, steadying me as we settled into cushioned chairs. He wasted no time. Victoria Sanders called me this morning, he began, his tone measured. She said you're no longer handling our account and offered to oversee it herself until a replacement is found. My jaw tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Of course, Victoria would try to claim North Bay's loyalty, oblivious to the cracks she'd ignored. David leaned forward, setting his mug down. What she doesn't know is, we've been concerned about Harbor Point for months. I blinked, surprised. Our latest campaign has surpassed projections by 23%. The results were stellar, he acknowledged, because of you. But we've noticed delays, inconsistent quality from others, a sense they're coasting on our business. His words landed like a validation I hadn't dared seek. 3 months ago, our board suggested exploring new partners. I resisted because of you. Your understanding of our brand is unmatched. My mind raced, piecing together the implications. When I'd reached out about opportunities here, it was a cautious step, not a betrayal. David's next words shifted the ground beneath me. Your inquiry felt like serendipity, But let me be clear, we weren't poaching. We'd have waited for your notice. I nodded, grateful for his integrity. I planned to give 2 weeks. I said, needing him to know my professionalism wasn't in question. He smiled, a glint of approval in his eyes. That's why we're here. He opened a folder and slid a document across the table. This isn't an interview. It's a job offer, Director of Client Strategy. You'd build a team to manage all our external marketing partnerships. I glanced at the paper, my breath catching at the salary, nearly double what Harbor Point paid more than I'd dared request in my last denied raise. The figure wasn't just generous, it was a reckoning of my worth. I paused, searching for words. Very compelling. David shook his head. It's market rate for your results. Sometimes you need to leave a place to see what you're capable of. I asked for the night to review, a professional courtesy, though my heart already leaned toward yes. As we stood, David's handshake felt like a pact. I look forward to your answer, he said. Walking back through North Bay's vibrant office, I felt a shift not just in my career but in my understanding of value. Victoria had seen my ambition as disloyalty. David saw it as vision. The elevator descended, but I was rising, carried by the certainty that this was no mere job offer. It was a door to a future I'd earned, one Harbor Point could never have offered. The evening air carried a crisp edge, Spokane's city lights flickering like distant promises as I stood on my balcony, a glass of wine in hand. North Bay's offer letter lay signed on my kitchen table, its weight more than paper, a testament to a value I'd fought to claim. Yet as I savored the quiet, my phone buzzed with whispers of chaos from the world I'd left behind. Harbor Point, it seemed, was reeling, and their sudden interest in me wasn't about remorse, but survival. What they didn't know was that I'd already chosen a path forward, one where respect wasn't a belated bargaining chip. By late afternoon, my phone had become a conduit for office murmurs. Thomas, the IT specialist, texted first, his message laced with irony. Victoria held an emergency meeting after you left. Said you were fired for breach of loyalty. Nobody's buying it. I shook my head, picturing her stern delivery in the conference room, framing my ambition as treason. Jessica, the receptionist, followed with a tidbit. She's been on calls all day looking stressed. Word is that North Bay is rethinking its contract. The news didn't surprise me. Victoria had banked on controlling our biggest client, unaware that my departure had exposed her overreach. As dusk settled, an unknown number called the voice on the other end, precise and measured. This is Elaine Winters, Harbor Point's board. She said I'd like to discuss yesterday's incident. Victoria may have acted hastily. Can we meet tomorrow? My stomach tightened, not from doubt, but from the audacity of their timing. 3 years of ignored raise requests, and now a board member was calling. I've accepted another position, I replied, keeping my tone even, but I can meet at 9 a.m. to discuss. I'm not negotiating a return. A pause hung between us, understood. Elaine said, though her voice hinted at skepticism, I'll see you then. I sipped my wine, the city's hum grounding me. Harbor Point's sudden outreach wasn't about me. It was about North Bay's 30% revenue stake. Victoria's gamble had backfired and the board was scrambling. I felt no vindication, only a resolve to face them on my terms. The next morning, I chose a navy suit, its sharp lines, a reminder of my equality in this meeting, not a dismissed employee begging for redemption. Driving to Harbor Point, I rehearsed my words, determined to articulate what they'd failed to see, not for their sake, but for my closure. The reception area felt alien as I signed the visitor log, a surreal shift from my years as an insider. Jessica's eyes widened, her professional smile softening. You're here for Ms. Winters, she said, then leaned closer, voice low. Everyone's saying you didn't deserve this. You were the heart of this place. Her words warmed me, a quiet echo of the respect I'd earned. Thank you, I murmured, signing my name with deliberate care. The elevator ride to the conference room was a moment to center myself, to shed the weight of yesterday's humiliation. Elaine Winters waited alone, her silver bob and poised demeanor exuding boardroom authority. No Victoria, a private reckoning. Then thank you for coming, she said, standing to shake my hand, her grip firm but not aggressive. We sat a slim folder before her. I've reviewed your file, she began opening it. 6 years of exemplary reviews, significant account growth, and 3 denied salary requests. I wasn't aware of this pattern. Her admission caught me off guard. I'd assumed the board rubber-stamped Victoria's decisions. Management has discretion within limits. She continued, her tone hinting at disapproval. There's no policy against seeking other opportunities yet. Your termination lacks documentation. I nodded. Measured. The term used was disloyal. Elaine's eyebrow arched a flicker of judgment. A curious choice. She closed the folder, her gaze direct. The board offers reinstatement, your last requested salary plus 10% and the title of Senior Account Director. The offer was a belated olive branch, generous only in its desperation. That's kind of you, I said, my voice steady, but I've signed a contract elsewhere, effective. Monday. Elaine's eyes narrowed slightly. With North Bay, I sidestepped, maintaining boundaries. I'd rather not disclose at this time, she pressed, undeterred. If this is about compensation, we can revisit terms. The board values your work. The irony stung the value they'd never shown until North Bay's shadow loomed. It's not just money, I said, choosing candor. It's about respect, about recognizing worth, before someone's forced to seek it elsewhere. Harbor Point demanded loyalty, but offered none in return. That imbalance isn't sustainable. Elaine studied me, then nodded, a glint of respect in her eyes. A fair point. Whatever your path, I wish you success. I stood shaking her hand and walked out the glass doors, closing behind me with a soft thud. The morning sun bathed Spokane's streets, and I felt lighter than I had in years. This wasn't about groveling for a second chance. It was about reclaiming my story. Harbor Point's scramble had given me a platform to voice what they'd ignored, not for their redemption, but for my peace. As I drove away, my phone pinged with an email from David. Welcome to the team. The future beckoned, and I was ready to step into it, unburdened by a past that no longer defined me. Monday morning arrived like a canvas freshly stretched, its possibilities sharp and bright against the backdrop of Spokane's skyline. My new office at North Bay Solutions gleamed with promise. A real office, not a cubicle with a door and windows framing distant mountains. I arranged my fern on the desk, its green fronds a quiet link to the past, and felt the weight of a new title, Director of Client Strategy. Victoria's dismissal had been meant to break me, but as I stood in this space, welcomed by a team eager for my lead, I saw her error. She hadn't ended my career, she'd launched it. David Clean had ensured everything was ready, a welcome basket with local coffee, a laptop preloaded with project files. At 9 a.m., he stopped by, his presence steadying as he introduced me to my team. 5 marketing specialists, their faces a mix of curiosity and respect. This is our new director, he announced in the conference room, glass walls reflecting the morning light. Many of you know her work from Harbor Point. We're lucky to have her expertise in-house. I smiled, acknowledging familiar names from past campaigns, and outlined our priorities, streamlining agency partnerships, starting with a review of existing contracts. The team's enthusiasm mirrored my own, a shared hunger for excellence. By mid-morning, David invited me to a smaller meeting with North Bay's executive team, their faces serious around a polished table. The chief financial officer spoke first, her voice clipped. We're reevaluating Harbor Point's contract, up for renewal next month. Your perspective is critical. The chief marketing officer nodded. You know our needs and their capabilities better than anyone. The moment was ripe for retribution, a chance to recommend cutting Harbor Point loose, a blow. Victoria would feel deeply, but vengeance wasn't my style. We should assess them like any partner, I said, my tone deliberate. Their campaigns have been solid, but account management and responsiveness need scrutiny. The executives exchanged glances, approving of my restraint. A week later, on Wednesday, the decision landed. David shared the email before it went out, a courtesy, given my history. I'd recused myself from the final vote to avoid bias, but the outcome was clear. After careful consideration, North Bay Solutions will transition our account to Meridian Creative, effective immediately. This reflects our evolving digital strategy. Our new director will oversee the transition. I imagined Victoria's reaction, shock giving way to panic, as 30% of Harbor Point's revenue slipped away. My role in the transition was a quiet irony, a professional full circle I hadn't sought but couldn't ignore. That afternoon, my phone pinged with a message from Jessica Harbor Point's receptionist. The office is a mess. Victoria's in nonstop meetings, and 3 account managers are job hunting. You were right to leave. The news stirred no glee, only a calm certainty. Harbor Point's unraveling wasn't my doing, their neglect of talent, and clients had paved the way. I focused instead on my team drafting transition plans for Meridian Creative, ensuring North Bay's brand thrived. Each task felt like laying bricks for a future I'd build on my terms, not Victoria's missteps. The soft glow of my laptop screen cast shadows across my apartment, Spokane's evening pulse a distant hum beyond the window. A LinkedIn notification blinked Jessica's connection request paired with a message. You were always so kind here. Harbor Point's not the same without you. I paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard, and accepted with a reply. Thank you for your warmth. Wishing you the best. The exchange, simple yet sincere, felt like a final thread snipped from my past. I'd left Harbor Point not with bitterness, but with a clarity that carried me forward, a strength I hadn't known I possessed. My days at North Bay were a whirlwind of strategy sessions and team syncs, each challenge a chance to shape something enduring. Overseeing all marketing partnerships, including the handoff from Harbor Point, demanded precision and poise. Meridian Creative's team leaned on my insights, and I guided them with the same care I'd given North Bay's campaigns. The work was demanding, late nights crafting proposals, early mornings aligning with global vendors. But it was mine a canvas for my vision. Colleagues sought my input, their trust a currency more valuable than any raise Victoria had withheld. A year later, standing on my balcony under a spring sky, I traced the arc of my journey. Victoria's firing, meant to shame me, had been a catalyst, a push to seek what I deserved. I hadn't chased revenge, her loss of North Bay. The whispers of Harbor Point's decline were consequences of her own making. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about proving others wrong, but proving myself right. North Bay's faith in me, the team I was building, the respect I commanded, these were my triumphs, rooted in a self-respect I'd claimed when others overlooked it. Spokane's lights twinkled below each, a story of struggle and resilience. I'd found mine not in the shadow of Harbor Point's glass doors, but in the open expanse of possibility. Victoria had given me an unintended gift, the courage to step into my worth, to build a career that reflected my value. As I turned back to my apartment, the fern on my desk caught the moonlight thriving in its new home. Like me, it had found where it belonged. I'll never forget the night I met Tyler Hayes, mostly because everyone else thought he was just a waiter. Me, Valentina Scott, a 28-year-old teacher with a knack for spotting what's real, I saw something more in him from the start. It was a chilly Tuesday in Boston, the kind where the wind sneaks under your coat and makes you crave something warm. I ducked into this little Italian place downtown, red-checkered tablecloths, candles flickering in old wine bottles, the hum of laughter over clinking plates. There he was, balancing a tray of steaming pasta like it was an art form, his dark hair falling just over his eyes. He caught me staring, flashed a grin that could melt the frost off the windows, and said, "Spaghetti carbonara, or are you still deciding?" I was hooked, not on the pasta, though it was damn good, but on him. Tyler had this easy way about him, like he belonged wherever he stood, tray or no tray. We got to talking, and soon enough those Tuesday dinners turned into Wednesday coffees, then whole weekends tangled up in each other. 6 months later, I was calling him the love of my life, and he was slipping a ring on my finger in that same restaurant, right by the corner table where we'd started. Of course, my family had opinions. I broke the news over Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's, roast chicken cooling on the table, the air thick with their unspoken judgments. My sister Lauren, 32 and perpetually polished, set her wine glass down with a click. "A waiter, Val? Seriously?" she said, her voice sharp enough to slice the tension. She leaned forward, blonde hair swinging like a curtain, her manicured nails tapping the table. "With your degree, your whole thing, you're settling for a guy who serves breadsticks for a living?" I shrugged, picking at my plate. He makes me laugh, Lauren. That's plenty. She rolled her eyes, glancing at Mom like I'd lost my mind. Mom, Diane Scott, 55 and weary from decades of Lauren's drama, just sighed. Dad, Mark, 57 and gruff as ever, muttered, "If he's good to her, what's the problem?" But Lauren wasn't done. Good to her? Please. He's probably counting on her paycheck to upgrade his apron. That's when I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. Not because she was right, she couldn't have been more wrong, but because the truth was so much bigger. See, Tyler wasn't just a waiter. He was Tyler Hayes Lombardi, heir to the Lombardi restaurant empire, a billion-dollar kingdom of fine dining and hidden vineyards. He'd taken the job to learn the business from the grease-stained ground up, washing dishes, bussing tables, serving folks like me, because that's who he was. Humble, deliberate, and a little mischievous. Later that night, sprawled on my couch with a glass of cheap red, I told him about Lauren's jab. He laughed, that low rumble that always warmed me up and pulled me close. "Let them judge," he said, his dark eyes twinkling like he was in on a private joke. "It's half the fun." I grinned back, knowing we'd agreed to keep his secret until after the wedding. Let them see a waiter in a rented suit. Let them whisper. The reveal would be sweeter that way, and oh, it was coming. Lauren had no idea she was setting herself up for the fall of her life, and I couldn't wait to watch it unfold. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and sharp, the kind of day that makes you believe in fresh starts. I stood in the bridal suite of our little church, sunlight spilling through the stained glass, painting the wooden floor in reds and blues. My dress hung on a hook, simple and elegant. Nothing like the over-the-top gown Lauren had worn for her own wedding 3 years back. Mom fussed with my veil, her hands trembling slightly, not from nerves, but from exhaustion. She'd been fielding Lauren's nonsense for months, ever since I'd announced Tyler. "Hold still, Valentina," she murmured, pinning a curl. "You look beautiful." "Thanks, Mom," I said, catching her eye in the mirror. Diane Scott, 55, had lines etched deep from worry, but her smile was soft, real. She'd grown tired of Lauren's theatrics, and I couldn't blame her. My sister had spent weeks calling cousins, aunts, anyone who'd listen, insisting this wedding was a mistake. "A waiter!" she'd hiss, like it was a disease. Half the family hadn't shown up because of her, but I didn't care. The people who mattered were here. Then the door flew open, and there she was. Lauren Brooks, 32, striding in like she owned the place. Her designer dress hugged her like armor, all sharp lines and shimmering fabric, her heels clicking against the floor. "You can't go through with this, Val," she declared, arms crossed, her voice slicing the quiet. "Do you know what people are whispering? That you've lost it, throwing yourself at some nobody." Mom straightened, her patience snapping. "The only one whispering is you, Lauren," she said, her tone flat, tired. "Give it a rest." Lauren ignored her, zeroing in on me. "He's a waiter, Valentina. You're a teacher. You've got a degree. Why settle? He's probably after your money, what little you've got." I couldn't help it. I laughed. The idea of Tyler, with his secret billions, chasing my teacher's salary was absurd, like a cat hunting a crumb when it owned the bakery. Lauren's eyes narrowed, mistaking my amusement for defiance. "Fine," she snapped, tossing her hair. "Ruin your life, but don't come crying to me when you're stuck in some dingy apartment over a pizza joint." If she only knew about the loft we'd already bought, or the island getaway for our honeymoon. But I bit my tongue, remembering Tyler's plan. Keep it quiet, let the truth hit like a thunderclap. "Thanks for the concern," I said, my voice steady, a smile tugging at my lips. "I'll take my chances." She huffed, spun on her heel, and marched out, leaving a whiff of expensive perfume and brewing trouble. Mom shook her head, muttering, "That girl." I met her gaze in the mirror again, both of us knowing Lauren wasn't done. She'd started a fire she couldn't control, and I was ready to watch it burn. Right into the moment she'd see just how wrong she'd been. The church smelled of polished wood and lilies as I stepped into the aisle, my heart thudding in time with the organ's soft hum. Tyler stood at the altar, handsome in his tailored suit, a detail Lauren had probably chalked up to a rental shop's best effort. I caught his eye, and he winked, steady as ever, while I adjusted my grip on the bouquet. The pews were half empty, a testament to Lauren's campaign to convince the family this wedding wasn't worth their time. Cousins I'd grown up with, aunts who'd bake me cookies, they'd stayed home, swayed by her venom. But the people who mattered, like Mom and Dad in the front row, were here, and that was enough. The ceremony began smoothly, the minister's voice a gentle drone as he led us through the vows. Tyler's hand found mine, warm and firm, and I felt the world shrink to just us until the moment I'd been dreading arrived. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, the minister intoned, "Speak now or forever hold your peace." I tensed, knowing Lauren too well, and sure enough, she shot up from her seat like a jack-in-the-box wound too tight. "This is absurd," she shouted, her voice echoing off the stone walls. Heads turned, a ripple of gasps spreading through the sparse crowd. She didn't stop there. Lauren marched toward the altar, her heels snapping against the floor like gunfire, her face twisted with righteous fury. "You're marrying a waiter, Val! How low can you sink?" she spat, jabbing a finger at Tyler. "He's nobody, a server scraping by on tips, and you're throwing your life away on him. It's pathetic." I felt my cheeks burn, not from shame but from the sheer audacity of her ignorance. Tyler squeezed my hand, his calm a lifeline as Lauren ranted on. "Everyone here knows this is a joke. You were supposed to be the smart one, not some charity case for a guy in an apron." Dad's voice cut through from the front pew, low and firm. "Lauren, sit down." She ignored him, too caught up in her own storm. Mom clutched her purse, her lips a tight line, while the minister shifted awkwardly, clutching his Bible like a shield. Lauren turned to the guests, arms flung wide. "When this crashes and burns, don't expect me to pick up the pieces. You've picked your bargain bin life. Enjoy it." With that, she spun on her heel and stormed out, the heavy doors slamming behind her, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. I exhaled, the air shaky in my lungs, and glanced at Tyler. His mouth twitched, a flicker of amusement dancing in his eyes despite the chaos. "Should we tell her now?" he whispered, his voice low enough for only me to hear. I shook my head slightly, a smile tugging at my lips. Not yet. Lauren had just dug her own grave in front of everyone, and I wasn't about to spoil the next act by rushing the reveal. The minister cleared his throat, his glasses fogging with nerves. "Shall we, proceed?" he stammered. I nodded firmly. "Yes, let's keep going." The vows continued, each word binding Tyler and me closer, made sweeter by Lauren's absence. She thought she'd ruined everything, but she'd only set the stage for what was coming. I could almost hear her heels still echoing, a prelude to her own undoing, and I held Tyler's hand tighter, ready for the real show to begin. The drive to the reception felt like a victory lap, Tyler easing his vintage Mustang, his own, not some rented prop, through Boston streets as Rice showered us from the church steps. I leaned back against the leather seat, my dress rustling, and watched the city blur past, my heart still buzzing from the ceremony. "Ready for Act 2? Tyler murmured, his hand brushing mine, his tone playful, yet steady. I grinned, thinking of Lauren's tantrum and the bomb we were about to drop. "More than ready," I said, imagining her face when the truth hit. "Think she'll show?" He smirked, eyes on the road. "Oh, she'll show. People like Lauren can't resist a chance to gloat." He was right, of course. She'd stormed out, but skipping the reception, where she could critique every cheap detail, wouldn't fit her script. The Lombardi loomed ahead, its elegant facade a fortress of glass and stone, a place usually reserved for celebrities and CEOs. Today, It was ours, mysteriously closed to the public, and I felt a thrill as Tyler pulled up. He hopped out, circling to open my door, and helped me step onto the curb, my heels clicking softly. The doors swung wide, and a collective gasp rose from our arriving guests as they took in the sight. Crystal chandeliers casting golden light over marble floors, hand-painted murals climbing the walls, servers in white gloves weaving through with champagne flutes, each bottle worth more than Tyler's supposed monthly wage. "This must be a mistake," someone whispered behind me, a cousin who'd actually shown up. "How'd they afford this?" I bit back a laugh, smoothing my dress, and caught Tyler's eye as we stepped inside. The room buzzed with confusion and awe, a perfect prelude to the moment I'd been savoring. Then Lauren arrived, fashionably late, her heels announcing her before she even crossed the threshold. She froze in the doorway, her perfectly made-up face twisting in disbelief. "This can't be right," she said loudly, striding toward me, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "The Lombardi doesn't host weddings, ever. There's been a mix-up." Tyler appeared at my side, his presence calm and unshakable. "They do for family," he said smoothly, his words landing like a velvet hammer. Before Lauren could process that, an elderly man approached. Vincent Lombardi, 78, the patriarch of the empire, his impeccable suit as sharp as his gaze. Everyone in the restaurant world knew him, a legend who rarely showed his face. He clapped Tyler on the shoulder, his voice warm but edged with steel. "Tyler, my grandson, finally married to his beautiful Valentina." The silence was deafening. Lauren's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble with a crystalline crash. "Grandson?" she choked out, her eyes darting between Tyler and Vincent, her composure unraveling. Vincent turned to her, his brow arching slightly. "And you must be the sister who made such a scene at the church. What was it you called my grandson?" "Ah, yes, a server. A nobody." The color drained from Lauren's face, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I squeezed Tyler's hand, fighting a grin as the room tilted around her. Guests whispered furiously, piecing it together. The simple ceremony, now this lavish reveal, the waiter who was really royalty. "Why didn't he tell me?" Lauren demanded, her voice cracking as she found her footing. "You let me believe. You let me make a fool of myself." I met her gaze, my tone quiet but firm. "Would it have mattered? Would you have treated him differently if you'd known? That's why we kept it quiet, to see who'd show up for us, not his name." Vincent's dry chuckle broke the tension. "Perhaps next time you'll think before assuming a man's worth lies in his paycheck." Lauren stood there mortified, the weight of her own words crashing down as the truth sank in. Not just Tyler's fortune, but her misjudgment, laid bare for all to see. I leaned into Tyler, the warmth of his arm grounding me, and thought how perfectly she'd played into her own humiliation. The night was just beginning and we hadn't even danced yet. The whispers grew louder as guests processed the reveal. Tyler Hayes Lombardi, heir to an empire, not some broke waiter after all. I watched Lauren from the corner of my eye, her face a mask of shock under the chandelier's glow, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her purse. She'd been so sure, so loud, and now she stood alone, the center of a different kind of attention. Vincent cleared his throat, his sharp eyes still on her. "If you'd like to leave, no one would blame you," he said dryly. "You've already provided enough entertainment for one day." The room held its breath, waiting for her next move, but Tyler stepped forward before she could bolt. "Stay," he said, his voice steady, kind in a way she didn't deserve. "Enjoy the reception. Consider it a chance to start over, to see people for who they are, not what they own or do." I looked up at him, pride swelling in my chest. Even after her venom, he was offering her grace, a lifeline she'd never have tossed his way. Lauren blinked, her lips parting, then closing again, clearly thrown by his calm. I I owe you both an apology, she stammered, her bravado gone, her voice small for once. Vincent smirked, leaning on his cane. That can wait until after the first dance, I think. My grandson and his bride have earned their moment. He waved a hand, and the band struck up a slow, lilting tune, the notes curling through the air like a promise. Tyler turned to me, his hand outstretched, and I took it, feeling the weight of the day lift as he led me to the floor. We swayed together, his arm around my waist, my head resting briefly against his shoulder. She'll never change completely, he murmured, reading my thoughts as always, his breath warm against my ear. I glanced at Lauren, now hovering near a table, a squirrel caught in the headlights of her own making. No, I agreed softly. But maybe she'll think twice before judging someone by their job again. The guests watched us, their earlier shock melting into smiles, and I let myself sink into the moment. Tyler's love, the music, the quiet triumph of being us, not what anyone expected. Lauren stayed, though she kept her distance, her eyes darting around as if recalculating her place in this new reality. I caught glimpses of her between spins, alone, clutching a fresh glass, probably plotting how many apologies it'd take to claim a connection to the Lombardis. The reception rolled on, course after exquisite course from the family's kitchens, wine from their private reserves, stories of Tyler's days scrubbing pots to earn his stripes. Vincent regaled the crowd, his gravelly voice carrying, "Most trust fund kids want a corner office, not Tyler, he started with a mop." I smiled, knowing Lauren heard every word, her face tightening as the depth of her error sank in. She'd dismissed a man who'd worked harder than her hedge fund husband ever would. But for now, I let it go, focusing on Tyler's hand in mine, the night stretching ahead like a fairy tale we'd written ourselves. Her reckoning could wait. Ours was here, and it was perfect. A year slipped by, and life with Tyler settled into something simple yet rich, like a good wine we didn't flaunt. We'd moved into a loft overlooking Boston Harbor, all clean lines and wide windows, nothing ostentatious despite his Lombardi billions. I kept teaching, molding young minds in a classroom that smelled of chalk and promise, while Tyler took on more at the family empire, still hands-on, still himself. Lauren, though, she couldn't let it go. "You could at least let me host a proper housewarming," she'd grumbled one afternoon, perched on our couch, eyeing our minimalist decor like it offended her. "This place deserves to be shown off." I'd smiled, sipping my coffee. "That's exactly why we don't." She didn't get it. For months after the wedding, she'd leaned hard into our new reality, name-dropping the Lombardis at every chance, her social media suddenly brimming with "my sister's amazing restaurants" and "family dinner at Vincent's." Tyler found it funny, shrugging as we scrolled through her posts. "At least she's promoting the business," he'd say, his grin lopsided. But everything shifted when her perfect world cracked open. Her husband, Chris Brooks, 35 and slick as oil, got caught in a scandal, insider trading, fraud, the kind of mess that makes headlines. Overnight, their wealth vanished, frozen by federal investigators, their condo seized, their cars towed. It was late one night when she showed up at our door, rain streaking the glass behind her. Mascara ran down her face in black rivers, her designer coat soaked through, her voice trembling as I let her in. "They're taking everything," she sobbed, collapsing onto the couch, her hands twisting together. "The house, the cars. Chris might go to jail. I don't know what to do, Val." I led her to the living room where Tyler looked up from his laptop, his brow furrowing with concern. She wiped her eyes, smearing the mess further, and forced the words out. "I need help. I don't know how to start over." I exchanged a glance with Tyler, his dark eyes steady, weighing the moment. This was Lauren, the sister who'd tried to torch our wedding, who'd only warmed to us after the Lombardi name glittered in her view. Now here she was, stripped bare, asking for a lifeline. Tyler set his laptop aside, leaning forward. "There's an apartment?" he said finally, his tone even. "Above our smaller place in Somerville. It's not fancy, but it's a start." Lauren's head snapped up, her breath catching. "You'd do that? After how I treated you?" I nodded, crossing my arms. "On one condition, you work there. Start at the bottom like Tyler did." Her eyes widened, a flicker of horror crossing her face. "Wait tables?" she asked, her voice thin. Tyler smiled faintly. "Among other things, wash dishes, bus tables, learn the ropes, earn your way." She stared at us, the rain tapping the windows like a clock ticking down her pride. Then slowly, she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." I watched her, wondering if she'd stick it out or run at the first dirty plate. But something in her eyes, raw, desperate, told me this might be the start of something real. The next few months were a slow unraveling of the Lauren I'd known, replaced by someone I barely recognized. She moved into the Somerville apartment, a cramped walk-up with peeling paint and a creaky bed, and traded her silk blouses for sensible shoes and a server's apron. I'd drop by the restaurant sometimes, peering through the steamy window to see her fumbling with trays, her hair tied back in a messy knot. She cried the first time she had to scrub a bathroom, her hands red and raw, and broke 3 plates her first night waiting tables, the crash loud enough to turn heads. She burned herself twice learning to sauté, cursing under her breath as blisters bloomed, but she didn't quit. I watched her transform, bit by bit, from the sister who'd sneered at service workers to one who'd snap at rude customers, her voice sharp. "They're doing their best. Lay off," she'd say, her chin up. She started tipping bigger at other places, slipping extra bills under her coffee mug, and once caught a busboy's arm to thank him, her smile genuine. It was strange, seeing her shed the layers of arrogance like old skin, revealing something tougher underneath. 6 months in, I visited her on a busy Friday, the restaurant alive with clinking glasses and sizzling grills. She was expediting orders, her focus laser-tight, no makeup, no pretense, just honest work. Tyler slipped beside me, his shoulder brushing mine, as we watched from a corner booth. "She's doing well," he said, his voice low, warm. "The staff actually likes her now." I raised an eyebrow, half smiling. "Think she's learned her lesson?" He nodded, his eyes crinkling. "Several." "Want to tell her the news?" I agreed, waiting until her shift ended, her apron streaked with sauce as she joined us at the table, exhaustion carving lines into her face. She sank into the chair, wiping her brow. "Rough night," she muttered, then looked up, curious. Tyler leaned forward, casual as ever. "How'd you feel about managing this place?" Lauren's eyes widened, her breath hitching. "What?" she whispered. "You've learned every job," I said softly. "Earned the staff's respect. The current manager's heading to our new spot in Chicago. It's yours if you want it." She blinked, tears welling up, and for a moment, she was silent, grappling with something deep. "But why?" she finally asked, her voice breaking. "After everything?" "Because you proved us wrong," I replied, my tone gentle but firm. "We thought you'd never change, that you'd always care more about status than substance. But look at you now." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, a shaky laugh escaping. "I was awful to you both. I let money and titles blind me to what matters, and now—" She paused, glancing at Tyler. "Now what?" he prompted, his smile encouraging. "Now I know it's about who people are," she said, her voice steadier. "Not what they own or do. I'm actually proud to be a server. Proud of what I've learned, what I can do." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand, feeling the calluses she'd earned. Tyler nodded, his pride mirroring mine. Then it's settled, he said. Manager Lauren Brooks, starting next week. She laughed again, softer this time, and I saw it. The sister I'd lost to designer labels and social ladders, finally surfacing, real and raw. She wasn't perfect, but she was hers, and that was more than I'd ever hoped for. That night, Tyler and I walked home under a sky pricked with stars, Boston Harbor glinting below like a spilled treasure. His hand found mine, warm and sure, and he squeezed it gently as we strolled, the city's hum a quiet backdrop. Your sister's finally found her way, he murmured, his voice carrying that steady warmth I loved. I smiled, correcting him softly. Our way, the hard way, the honest way. He chuckled, the sound blending with the rustle of leaves underfoot, and I felt a peace settle over me, deep and true. Lauren's shift had ended with a promise. She'd managed the Somerville spot, wearing her new role like a badge she'd fought for. Next month, the family reunion loomed, and I could already picture her there, probably in her Lombardi uniform, facing the relatives she'd once swayed against us. They'd whisper, no doubt, stunned to see her trading status for sweat, but she'd be ready, herself at last, no matter what they thought. I laughed quietly, imagining her flipping her hair defiantly, and Tyler glanced at me, his brow arching. What's so funny? Just picturing Lauren at the reunion, I said, my tone wry. She'll own it, apron and all. He grinned, nodding. She's ready. And she was. This wasn't about the wedding reveal, dazzling as it had been, or even her humbling that night under the chandeliers. The real victory was here, in her finding who she was beneath the gloss. A woman who'd scrubbed floors, served plates, and come out stronger. Sometimes, I realized, the best revenge isn't about settling scores. It's about helping someone grow, watching them step into a better version of themselves. Tyler and I kept walking, our steps in sync, our life still simple despite the wealth we could claim. True richness, we'd learned, wasn't in the Lombardi billions or the loft's view. It was in who we were, how we treated others, the love that held us steady. Lauren's journey, rough and real, was proof people could change, given the chance and the push. As the harbor lights faded behind us, I leaned into Tyler, content with our quiet triumph, knowing the greatest win wasn't hers alone. It was ours, together, always.